in Red Star Corporation, and with Red Star Corporation, the American Henley Chamber of Commerce has an excellent cooperation the last 2 years, if I remember. And we provide through, the Red Star Corporation's FDA services to potential exporters to the United States. So, Coley, you have,
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. The question was asked earlier by a gentleman up front. What's the first step that you should take, or the first phone call you should make when you're entering the U.S. market? And I agree. Choosing the right business partner, the right channels, the right distribution outlets, all of these are very, very important. But now, more than ever, in the age of the Food Safety Modernization Act, all of which we know as FSMA, regulatory compliance can also dictate the success of your product in the U.S. So I would like to start with some basic FDA requirements. That's what's the number one question that's asked of me. What do I need to do to start being compliant? So we're going to talk about registration, U.S. agent. This is the basic number one thing that you must do. We're going to talk about prior notice, labeling, food canning, HACCP, and then we're going to look a little closer about the most recent Food Safety Modernization Act regulations that have just recently come out, and then we'll take time for questions over here on the panel. Okay, so before we even begin with the requirements, I would like to dispel some myths. Today, a lot of people approached me and said, hey, how do I get the FDA approval? Do I need to do something special for the FDA approval of my product, of my facility? It doesn't exist. FDA approves nothing when it comes to food. They set guidelines, they set regulations, and you must follow them. The only time that you know you're doing something wrong is when you're non-compliant, you get slapped on the wrist, and then you know there's a problem. So know the regulations, have a partner that knows the guidelines, and comply. I must drink water when I'm presenting. Okay, so let's move forward. How does FDA enforce? Someone asked, once you register with the FDA, do they immediately come and inspect you? No. An inspection is an option. Once you register with the FDA, you're basically saying, I'm going to be doing business with the U.S., so come inspect me anytime. But they might not do it this month, they might not do it next year, but they eventually will do it. So FDA does try to, whereas they don't approve, they inspect. They have a POP inspection, they may have a notice of inspection. Import refusals. Your product comes to the border. It's not compliant. FDA exercises its right to refuse your product. Import alerts. Enough times that your product is in violation, your country is in violation, your company is in violation, your product can go on import alert. And import alerts are ways that the communication between all the different ports with the FDA, they can communicate with each other and say, if this product, if this company, if this country sends this to the United States, stop it and do an automatic inspection. That's the purpose of import alerts. Warning letters, there's a problem, there's a warning letter. Suspension of registrations if you continue to violate or not be compliant. And then there's the civil and criminal offenses that you can have penalty-wise. So these are kind of the ways that FDA makes sure that your product is compliant. Okay, so to the basics. Everybody knows. You have to register your facility if you're going to do any business with the with the U.S. The litmus test is if you manufacture, if you process, if you package, if you hold or store the food for animal or human consumption in the United States, you have to register. So I had a scenario earlier today, someone was talking to me, and they said, Coley, we don't touch the product. We have someone else bottle it. It comes from an olive grove. Do I need to register? It's my company. I'm going to export it to the U.S. No. The purpose of FDA's registration is traceability, following that product to everyone that touches it. If you don't touch it, you're not registering. Now, also, during the registration process, you have to choose a U.S. agent. The U.S. agent is not the person that you're going to be doing business with. It's not your broker. It's not your importer. It's nothing having to do with business. It is the person that's going to communicate with the FDA if they have a question. Because the FDA is not calling Greece. FDA is not calling Italy. They want to call your U.S. agent. And you want to pick somebody that knows your product almost as well as you do, understands the regulations better than you do, and so when they answer the phone, they say all the right things. And they speak the truth, and they inform the FDA what they need to know about your product. Now, while this is old information, everybody knows about registration and U.S. agent. But what is new is this year, well actually last year, December, everybody had to renew their registrations. They renewed, they selected their designated U.S. agent again. It was all the same, right? February came up, and all of a sudden our phone was ringing off the hook. Why? Everybody, well not everybody, but a lot of people's registrations were canceled. And they had shipments on the water. The importers were calling, what's going on? We're getting in, the FDA, when the custom broker's putting in the prior notice, the registration's not working. What's going on? We registered in December. We designated our U.S. agent. What's the problem? The problem was FDA added an additional step where they said, if you designate a U.S. agent, that U.S. agent must now confirm that designation. Well, people that chose Cousin Eddie, or a business friend who that's not their job normally to be a U.S. agent, it went into the spam file. Or they missed the email. They did not respond to the U.S. agent designation. And guess what that meant? That registration was not complete, did not get renewed, and was immediately canceled. Everybody was in total mayhem and chaos. We had to immediately, as a company, Registrar Corp., we represent over 13,000 companies around the world. We are U.S. agent to them. So we immediately helped these other companies and quickly got them registered and made sure that their shipments weren't detained and they didn't have problems of non-compliance because of it. So that's the new information. So today, you already knew you had to register. You already knew you had to choose a U.S. agent. But now you make sure who you choose is available 24/7 to the FDA if they call. They should be based in the United States. They have to be based. And then the recommendation is that you choose somebody that is wise. FDA doesn't tell you have to do that. Choose somebody that's going to keep you up to date on the new regulations. Because I'm telling you, a deadline comes, and it comes fast. FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act, is filled with a bag of regulations. And those regulations are dropping out on timelines. So I speak to people all the time, and they say, oh, yes, I'm FSMA compliant. I did that 2 years ago. And I said, well, which regulation are you referencing? Because we've got 2 more that just fell out the bag. And the deadline was last year of September, this year of September, and we've got another one coming up in March of next year. So always know what FSMA regulation you're on. Always be partnering, like these gentlemen said here and here earlier, with the right business people, but also the right compliance people. You don't have to be alone. It's not worth it. There's not that much to do that you want to maybe just do this on your own and then have one issue. Because with FSMA, your reputation is everything. Because let me explain. This is called prior notice. This is another thing you have to do. Before any of your shipments before they arrive to the U.S., you have to do a prior notice. You have to announce to the FDA your product's coming. They want to know what it is. They want to know the product code and all of this. But even in that, they're looking at not just the information you gave them, product codes and so on. They're looking at the country. They're looking at the risk level of the product. They're looking at the reputation of the exporter. They're looking at the reputation of the importer. So, reputation is everything. Because once that's put into the prior notice, it goes into a system called PREDICT. It's the database for FDA that they decide with a series of numbers and risk numbers and whatever that is. They can't tell us. If you need to be detained or inspected further. So that's why when we say, when you choose your importer, don't be too eager. Oh my gosh, somebody wants to import my product. What's his reputation? Has he had warning letters? Because importers can have warning letters as well. And so you want to make sure everybody that you're partnering with and that's related to your product is clean and compliant. Product labeling. We've changed. I think Europe has done the same. We've made revolutionary change in our product labeling. That's the number one reason why people are detained coming into the United States. Something as simple as labeling. And FDA's got pages and pages of guidelines on it. They've got people like us that can help you with that. It's not worth it. We always tell, we have over 19,000 clients around the world, 19 offices, and we tell all of them, do not ship until we take a peek at your label. And we'll do a sneak peek. We'll look at it. We won't charge. We'll see something blaring or not. But don't ship. The labeling, it's just something where there are guidelines. So we can help you with that. You can read up on that, but get it right. Because again, that's the first mark on your record, and there begins your risk assessment every single time the prior notice goes into the FDA database. So here's just kind of showing all the different changes, and I'm not going to go granular on the labeling. I'm not born out of the labeling department, so therefore there are a lot of changes. We're shifting our focus from fat to sugar, so that should be good for the olive oil industry. We're getting more precise about our sugar. On our labels, we have, before it was just sugars, all sugar, total sugar, whatever. But now we're talking about added sugars. And to me, that's big, because all of these wonderful, healthy drinks that say, oh, there's sugar in there because of the fruit. That's natural occurring sugar. Well, guess what? Now they have to report if they added just a little bit more sugar in there to make us love their drink. So in the U.S. market, the added sugars is big. The declaration of we have to now have potassium listed, vitamin D listed, and I'm looking at my little list over here because, again, I'm not out of the labeling department. But also, it's gone voluntary with your vitamin A, C, and fluoride. RAC levels have changed. Your daily reference values have changed. So there's been a lot of change in the labeling. Now, with that being said, I think all of us know that the industry keeps pushing back the deadlines. And saying, okay, not until 2018, 2019, 2020. It's going to happen, okay, unless you guys know. Now, you guys may know something I don't know. But right now, it's still supposed to happen. So as our clients start to finish up their labels, we really strongly recommend that they go ahead and make the shift. Because what's going to happen is in your industry of yogurt or in your industry of olives jarred, you're going to start seeing your competitors with the new labels. And I'm going to tell you, as an American consumer, I'm looking for it. The moment I go into the energy drink section or the fruit juices or health juices, I'm going, oh my gosh, who added the sugar? I want to know right now. And the guy that doesn't tell me, he hasn't changed his label yet, I'm going, he's hiding something. So think about that, as far as with your labels. Okay, food canning establishment registration, FCE-SID. This is low-acid canned foods. This is acidified foods. Based on your pH level, your water activity, you have to have an additional registration from your facility registration. Okay, this is separate. This is registering your food canning establishment, letting the FDA know that you are jarring, glassing, putting something into a container that needs to be further assessed. It's called the SID, the process, in which FDA wants to know exactly the temperature and how you are packaging that product, because obviously it could have botulism, it could have a lot of things that could happen if you don't do this correctly. So they really laser in on this particular type of food and say, we want further information. So while they're not approving, you can see where FDA requires a lot of information of certain high-risk products and says, we need more, give it to us. And until you prove us otherwise, you're okay. Okay, HACCP. HACCP is obviously very well known all throughout the world. In the United States, HACCP is only required for seafood and juice companies. So for the longest time, the only thing you really had to do if you were a food company or a beverage company was register, and if you were foreign, designate a U.S. agent, make sure your labeling was correct, and then you had HACCP. And HACCP was only for seafood and juice. But FDA realized, we're really tasking these other guys and lasering in on the juices and the seafood, but what about the other beverage and food companies? Maybe we should give them something. Maybe we should ask for a little bit more information. So what they did was, in the Food Safety Modernization Act, remember I always say I look at it as a big bag of regulations. And out of that big bag of regulations came the Food Safety Plan. Now, this was up for much, it caused a lot of craziness in the industry because no one was really clear what food safety plan was acceptable. People had HACCP in Europe, and they're like, oh yes, well we have our HACCP plan, so we're good, they would tell their importer. The importer would call us and say, okay, so I'm getting his HACCP plan. Am I good with this whole new food safety thing? And I'd say, no. HACCP plan gets you 80% of the way. And you can list all the other certifications and inspections and schemes that you've had, but FDA is very clear that the food safety plan is different. But the good news is you can take information from your HACCP plan. You can take information from all your other food safety schemes and put them all together and get a 100% HARP-C plan. And what you'll find is this regulation is called the Preventive Controls Regulation. It is called HARP-C. So be aware, it's not HACCP, but it's HARP-C. So now in the United States of America, juice companies and seafood companies are exempt from HARP-C because they have HACCP. But the rest of the companies in the country must have HARP-C, and the rest of the companies in the world must have HARP-C. Now, there are some exemptions, and here they are here. Alcoholic beverages, they're heavily regulated already. FDA says no need to go back with that. Dietary supplements are exempt. There's some modifications. And then USDA products, of course, farms, and unexposed packaging and warehouse. Because if you have a temperature-controlled warehouse that you're holding something, you'll have to have a food safety plan. So basically what FDA is saying now is that the first wave of deadline for food safety plans were September of last year for all the very, very big companies. The second deadline for the food safety plan was September of this year for the mid-sized, smaller companies. Okay, now what does this really mean? I mean, no, but you're not filing this food safety plan. The food safety plan sits at your facility, must be compliant, follow the guidelines. So how is FDA knowing that you have it? Well, they came up with another regulation, which I actually think is actually a good idea, but I don't know. I'll share it with you guys and you tell me. They targeted the importer. They targeted the importer and they said, we're going to give you the regulation that you must follow called the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. Well, this tasks the importer now to make sure the foreign supplier is A, FDA compliant and good status. He has to monitor all of his foreign suppliers for warning letters, import alerts, and import refusals. By law, the importer must do this. Now, the only way he can do this is monitoring each database of the FDA, the warning letter database. He's combing all of his suppliers. Are any of my suppliers on warning letter database this month? Any of my suppliers on the import alert database this month? Any of my suppliers on the import refusal this month? The importer is obligated to frequently, throughout the year, not just in January, but throughout the year, monitor you. So now this puts a whole different type of relationship together. When the importer is choosing you and you're choosing the importer, you guys both have to be a little weary. And you have to do your due diligence. Because truly now, the importer is being held accountable by the FDA. So what can happen? They knock on the importer's door. They say, show us that you've been monitoring all your Greek clients periodically throughout the year. And you say, oh, yes, I've been doing it. Well, we've seen evidence in recent inspections that the FDA comes in with a list of people that are on violation, import alerts, import refusals, and they wait to see if their importer knows anything about it. Now, they have done no type of penalties or fines because, or any type of, it was an educational visit at this point because they're trying to really make sure all the importers know this regulation and they know what they're supposed to do. So the importer has to monitor you for your compliance status. So now more than anything, don't get a labeling problem. Don't get an import alert or a detention or a warning letter. Your importer has to know about it, and he has to consciously choose to continue doing business with you and make sure he can explain it to the FDA if they knock on the door. The FDA doesn't say that they have to stop, but they must at least be aware of your status and have chosen to continue doing business with you for some really, really good reason. Okay, so that's the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. Again, only aimed at the importer, but it's important to you because he's going to also need to verify that you have that food safety plan that was due of September of this year and September of last year for the bigger guys. So now the next step is how does FDA know that the importer has collected or is really who he is to you, and how does he connect all the dots? Well, FDA now has an additional section in the database. So when a custom broker goes to enter your information about your product, about your company, the product codes, they have to put the FSVP importer, the Foreign Supplier Verification Program importer. And either they're going to put that you're exempt because you're a really, 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 really small company and therefore you're exempt, or you're seafood, or you're alcohol, or they have to actually put in who your importer is, and it's called the FSVP importer. And once that's entered, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure that's kind of like a trigger, that now they know who your importer is, they've connected to the product, and so therefore at any point in time they can go visit your importer and check on you without even leaving the country. So the good news is that all of this is not a big deal because there's so little for you to do, but you just need to do it right. You need to make the right compliance partner. Make that partner and make sure that everything you've done is correct, because your reputation now is going to make the difference between an importer that's going to be doing a business with somebody that has a warning letter, an import alert, an import refusal. He's going to have to literally justify his relationship with you with the FDA if they come and inspect him. You are going to have issues exporting if it goes into the predict system and you have lots of problems. Now, the good news is I don't think we're going to have this problem because we exist. You have the option to go directly for sure with the FDA and do all of this on your own for free. Companies like us, we exist because we do this every day. So if that's a choice, we are here and we'll be sure to make sure you have our contact details. But here's another thing, and I'm sorry, I almost forgot this. This is called the FSMAwizard.com. We created this because while we're U.S. agent to over 13,000 clients around the world, we work with over 19,000 companies. And everybody was calling us during the preventive controls regulation and saying, hey, are we exempt? Are we modified? Do we have to do this? Do we have to do that? Well, a lot of this has to deal with your business sales, your company employees count, and we could not go through all of that due diligence with 19,000 clients. So we came up with the FSMA Wizard. We give this to importers. We give this to exporters. You answer a few questions. You're going to know your deadline. You're going to know your requirement under FSMA. We don't have to tell you anything. So answer the questions honestly about your product, about your company, your sales, and this will give you the information, and it's for free. It costs nothing. And we figure that if you know your requirements and you know your deadline and you need help, you'll call us. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.